What's up, guys? This is Ashley from Heart Logic Harmony, and today we're going to be talking about owning your diagnosis but not letting it own you. So this video is going to be for a few different types of people. This could be for someone who just received a diagnosis and is processing all the emotions around that. It could be for someone who has had a certain diagnosis for years but is still struggling, or it could be for anyone who has a friend, significant other, or loved one who has a diagnosis and you'd like a little bit more of an insight and understanding into this process. And I'll be saying diagnosis as a broadly used term because this could be applied to a whole spectrum of mental illnesses and perhaps even some physical and chronic ones. So first I'm going to talk about my story and my specific diagnoses. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and when I was 20, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I will be 26 this year for reference. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into my experience of first receiving my diagnosis. It felt like I had just won the golden ticket. I was so elated to finally have a label, finally have something tangible and concrete that I could hold on to after all the chaos I had been through for many, many years, trying to understand what I was going through with no relief for quite some time. I was so relieved I finally had a specific name that I could use to look up research articles, look into personal testimonies, and really just gather as much information as I possibly could. What this eventually turned into was that it consumed me completely. I eventually became obsessed with my label, with my definition, with my diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And the way that I let it consume me is that all the negative aspects that I believed were related, I completely started to own them in the way that I felt it was just a part of me that was never going to go away and it was never going to get better. This led to many impulsive and dangerous acts, addiction, promiscuous behavior, and a whole long line of stories I could delve into for another time. But in the ways of the borderline adventure, I went from one set of ways to another, black and white, one extremity to another. And this is when I went down the holistic path. I experimented with meds when I was younger, and after my spiritual awakening, we shall label it, I decided I wasn't going to do any drugs and I was going to rely completely on myself and meditation and yoga and all these wonderful things to treat my debilitating symptoms. You could maybe say that I am a little stubborn, and while I do stand by holistic medicine to this day, it was, in my opinion, a dangerous way of thinking to completely reject a certain part of myself, because I was a spiritual person now and I was using all of these modalities to treat and cure myself of borderline. Sometimes I would be doing really well and managing my symptoms, and sometimes I wouldn't be, and they would be incredibly debilitating, and this would come as much more as a shock to myself because I was rejecting that part of myself that was borderline, the bad child. Now, I won't say this is for every single person, but I have found within the spiritual community, as well as other ones, that there is an ideology to reject labels, and so I kind of fallen into that line of thinking that I wasn't borderline and I could get all through this and I didn't need a label. So in a second I'm going to go into why it's beneficial to own your diagnosis and the negative consequences that can come out from letting your diagnosis own you. But first I'm just going to speak a little part on labels. Again, going through the spiritual community, it's kind of just rebranded. Instead of saying borderline personality disorder, it could be, hello horsey, it could be the wounded inner child. But whatever you label that part of yourself as, it's important to identify it. Labels are important because they give us a context of information. It sets up a systematic way in terms of mental disorders, of symptoms, and therefore treatment. So this segues into what does it mean to own your diagnosis? Owning your diagnosis requires radical honesty with yourself. Being able to look at your thoughts, your behaviors and actions, and understand which ones are related to your diagnosis. So in turn, identifying your symptoms, identifying your traits. Why is this important? We begin to cultivate an awareness, and from that awareness we can then understand more about our triggers. And when you understand more about your triggers, perhaps you're able to prevent some more severe situations. Perhaps you're able to manage your symptoms more easily. Again, this could be for extreme situations, and in my case, emotional outbursts, or managing day-to-day life, mundane activities. Owning your diagnosis also helps to cultivate something that is essential for everyone, which is self-love. It's being able to look at all of the parts of yourself with awareness, and whether you want to label each one good or bad, something you want, something you don't want, you can say, this is me. And when I know myself, I'm therefore able to live the life I want to be able to live. Because ignorance comes from turning away from the shadow, turning away from the things that you don't want to look at because it's uncomfortable, because it makes you feel icky. All the icky feelings, and especially the icky behaviors, aren't going to go away if we don't give them the attention that they deserve. So for me, I'm able to say, I am a person who happens to have borderline personality disorder. I am not a borderline personality disorder person. It doesn't define me completely, but I have to understand the inner workings of it in order to manage it better. And from personal experience, the more I've delved into these woundings of myself, these trauma responses, the more I've been able to regulate those trauma responses. And again, really cultivate compassion. Compassion for myself instead of disgust or disdain. So what does it mean for your diagnosis to own you? So when I talked about the second half of my story of letting it completely consume me, it's that idea of this is all I am, this is all I will be, and I'm never going to change. And because of that, I'm now going to completely divulge in all of those negative traits and attributes, even perhaps more tenfold now. It also shows up as using your diagnosis as an excuse. And this can lead to a lot of harm, not only for yourself, but especially towards others. Like, oh, I screamed and yelled at that person because I have borderline, and I have emotional outbursts and uncontrollable anger, and I can't do anything about it. That's just me. I'm just a borderline. It's really essentially a cop-out. This, again, can lead towards self-sabotage, and also not seeking treatment or any type of help, whether that's professional help or any type of self-development or structure for your own self. As with anything, it's important to find a healthy balance. And I think the key word is awareness. Awareness has a foundation of neutral observation, and that's what we want to do, is be able to be the witness and observe ourselves, to therefore take better care of ourselves, and in that process, compassion, in that process, self-love, in that process, healing. Because as we all know, it's not a straight line, it's never linear, and it goes like this and this and this. But when we have those elements, it makes the ride a bit easier. I know these are certainly tough times for everyone, and especially in the realm of mental illness. Some people may be experiencing heightened symptoms, and I'm sending love out to everyone. Please remember to send the same love to yourself, and know this too shall pass. And remember, you are not your diagnosis. You are a beautiful human being on this beautiful planet, and we're all in this together on this wave of evolution. Thank you guys so much for being with me here today, and if you liked the video, make sure to leave it a like. Perhaps even click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!